welcome. This is DataStream online training for May 2021. I'm Mary Kruk, and I'm a water data specialist at the Gordon Foundation. And I'm joined by my colleague, Patrick LeClair. He's data specialist and overall DataStream guru. And today we're going to be walking you through the DataStream platform. So whether you're already a seasoned DataStream user or you just have encountered DataStream for the first time, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the platform. We're going to go over some useful features that you may or may not have been aware of, as well as maybe some newer features that you haven't encountered yet, as well as go over a few tips and tricks for how to use DataStream. Okay, so to kick things off, I'm going to start with a poll. We're just curious about how many of you are already familiar with the DataStream platform. So if you just want to enter in the poll, how familiar you are, we'll see where people are kind of at right now. Okay. So it looks like we've got a spread everywhere from not familiar at all to very familiar. Yeah, so that's awesome. It's good to see that there's people who are new that are joining us, and maybe some people that have been with us for quite a while. So hopefully all of you can take something from this. To get started, I'll just go over a little bit of background. So DataStream is an initiative that was started by the Gordon Foundation. The Gordon Foundation is a 55-year-old charitable organization based in Toronto. And the Gordon Foundation has, in collaboration with regional partnerships across the Mackenzie River Basin, Atlantic Canada, and the Lake Winnipeg Basin, launched DataStream. So DataStream is an open access hub for water quality data. It's free for everyone to use, and users can view, access, and download full water quality data sets across the country. So we have the 3 active hubs in the Mackenzie region, Atlantic, and Lake Winnipeg. And we're also releasing a Great Lakes DataStream hub in this fall, 2021. So look out for that as well. Okay, so today what we're going to cover, I'm going to begin by going through the DataStream webpage and some of the features beyond just the searching for data. And then I'm going to dive into the Explore tool, so how to use the map-based search and data visualization. And then I'm going to hand it back to Patrick, and he is going to go through some data formatting tips as well as how to upload data to DataStream. All right, so you can access DataStream through datastream.org or through the active regional hub pages. So this is MackenzieDataStream.ca, Atlantic DataStream, and Lake Winnipeg DataStream.ca. These all are free for anyone to use, and you don't need to log in to access data. We also have launched a beta website for the Great Lakes DataStream. So this is the homepage for Great Lakes DataStream, and you can navigate here if you want to learn a little bit more about how to contribute data, because we're currently doing a Great Lakes data drive. So if you or someone you know is monitoring in the Great Lakes region and you want to share your data on DataStream, you can make your way over to this web page and learn a little bit more, and we can get you set up. So when you navigate to the landing page of each of our hub pages, you'll get something like this. So you'll learn a little bit more about the region that you're in. So this is Mackenzie DataStream. You can watch a video that intros a little bit of background info about the region. Here we post some of our latest news stories. So we write blog posts about new DataStream features, some technical topics on water quality, as well as we highlight stories about some of the communities that we work with. So the newest ones will pop up here. We also have a counter at the bottom of each of our landing pages. So this will tally the number of monitoring groups, the number of unique data points, and unique monitoring locations that are within each hub. At the top of each web page, you can go right into the Explore Data tab, but besides that, we do have a news tab where we have an archive of all of the blog posts that we've written about. You can learn a little bit more about DataStream here and how to contribute, as well as our resource page is a really handy page that you'll want to check out. Here we post resources on how to use DataStream. So we'll post our latest upload templates and our guides for how to upload to DataStream. We also have a series of videos, so how-to videos for using DataStream that are relatively new, as well as links to some other DataStream pages that might interest you and some external resources. So resources about water quality monitoring or water data management. At the footer of each of our landing pages, you can learn a little bit more about DataStream terms of use, as well as our DataStream open data policies. Here's some other resources about water quality guidelines and other relevant topics, as well as over here, there's just a list of ways you can connect with us. Something I wanted to show you is right here is a link to our YouTube page. So we have a DataStream YouTube channel, which we encourage you to subscribe to. That way you'll get updates every time we post new videos. So all of our webinars are recorded, and we have a full playlist of all the Dive into Data webinars that have gone on in the past. We have a full list of our DataStream how-to videos in English and in French. We do monthly program updates for DataStream and then post them on our YouTube channel, as well as we have a series of videos that, that interview some of the communities that we work with. So that might interest you as well. Oh, and I didn't mention, but DataStream is also available fully in French as well. So you can toggle over to a French page if you wish. Okay, so now we can dive into the data exploration, which is the fun part. So here is our map-based search when you hit the Explore Data tab. You can use the map to search for an area of interest. So this is the active region for Mackenzie DataStream. You can zoom into an area you're interested in. You can also use some of our map layers. So our you have like major watershed boundaries. You also can turn on historical treaty boundaries to narrow in on a region that you're interested in. Each of these counters here in the bubble indicate the number of unique monitoring locations in that area. And as you zoom in towards a location, you'll see all the unique monitoring sites that are there. Excuse me. And if you click on a monitoring location, it'll bring up the site name as well as the data set it belongs to. So data sets are organized by monitoring programs. So this is the monitoring program that this data point belongs to. And clicking this will launch into our data visualization tool. But another way to search for data is also using the search filter. So you can type in something you're interested in, such as say you want to look for water temperature data. You can type it in here, select temperature, and it'll bring up the full list of data sets that include water temperature on Mackenzie DataStream. But you can also use the drop-down filters here. So you can filter by organizations that are contributing data to DataStream. You can filter by just selecting a common water quality parameter from this list, or you can select a province or a territory or a major watershed that you're interested in, and it'll zoom to that area on the map. So for example, if I go to our organization list and I select one of the organizations that have published on DataStream, it'll bring up the data sets that they've published. So they have one here, the Mikisew Cree First Nation. It'll show you where their data points are on the map. And then if you click on the data set name, this will launch the data visualization tool. So what the data visualization tool does is it automatically plots your data in a scatter plot. It'll automatically select the first 5 locations in the data set. So this is the full list of monitoring locations within this data set. You can turn all the monitoring locations on if you want to look at all of them, or you can select just the ones you're interested in. You can also select sites by toggling back to the map. So you can go up here on the top of the visualization tool to the map button here, or this pink map button. This will bring you back to the map and you can search for an area. So for example, if you're looking over here at the Desrochers River and you want to compare an upstream site with a downstream site, you can just find them on the map and hit add to compare, and then they'll be added to your graph. Another cool feature, if you're looking for an area that has several data points, is you can use the polygon tool. So up here in the left-hand corner, you can select to draw a polygon. So say you're interested in the monitoring locations around LeClair. You can just select, draw a polygon around the sites that you're interested in. And that'll auto select all of these sites around LeClair, and then those will be added to the graph as well. So if you're interested in looking at a specific period of time, there's two options. You can go to our date picker over here and just enter a date range that you're interested in, or on the graph itself, you can zoom in. So say you just want to look at 2016 data, you can zoom in on the map towards that data and look at things a little bit more closely. There's also, you can toggle between all the different water quality parameters in this data set. So this is a full list of the parameters that are measured in this data set. It'll give you not only the parameter name, but the unit, and then whether it was a field observation or a lab observation. So you can switch between different parameters here. We also have different chart types. So we offer 4 different chart types that you can use to explore the data. Using a box and whisker plot is also another really handy way to look at data for a bit more exploration. So this is a statistical summary of your data organized by monitoring location. So if we want to look at turbidity at each monitoring location, the box will indicate the most common spread of the data at each location. And then these whiskers here are the upper and lower ends of the data in that at that site. And then any points that fall outside the box and whiskers, those are statistical outliers. So those can help you identify anything unusual in your data set that you might want to look into a little bit further. So that's another handy way to look at your data. We also offer different layers that you can add onto the graph, like percentiles. So you can overlay that on your data. This shows you how much data falls below 75% of your data set. If you select a parameter that includes, that's associated with a water quality guideline, so for example, if I go to pH, it'll automatically overlay CCME water quality guidelines. So those are Canadian guidelines for the protection of freshwater life and aquatic life. So that will help you compare. We also include US EPA guidelines as well, so you can see which guidelines are included here. And if you want to learn a little bit more about guidelines, this info bubble will give you a little bit more of a definition, as well as link you to some of our resource pages about the water quality guidelines. So we've also got some summary statistics. Each of our if you have the parameter selected, it'll give you a table of summary statistics, and you can download that as a CSV file. And then finally, we've also got this Science Explainer tab. This is a really cool feature that we've incorporated recently. This gives a nice plain language summary of all the commonly measured water quality characteristics. So it'll talk about what the parameter is, why it's important to freshwater health, and how it's measured. So this can give you a little bit more context about why you're measuring the parameters you are in any water quality program. So they can be accessed up here on the Explainer tab, but we also have all this information on a standalone web page as well. Datastream.org/guide will bring you to this guide for water quality, and it lists all of our Science Explainer material here. So this is a really great educational tool, and we're also writing some new Science Explainers this year, so look out for some updates to this. Okay, so in addition to visualizing the data, you can also learn more using the left-hand panel here about the dataset contributors themselves. So if you go to dataset information, you can get some contact info on who collected the data. You can get an abstract of the data here. So just a breakdown about what the monitoring program is. You also can access information like what version the data set's on. So we do version tracking for data on DataStream. If there's updates to the data or any edits to the data, we'll give it a new version. And you can see which version you're on here. You can also go to a full metadata page and access previous versions of the data. As well, another really important feature is that when data is published on DataStream, we mint the data set with a digital object identifier, or DOI. So this is a permanent link to this data shared on DataStream, and people can use this to help to cite the data when they use it in any secondary works. It's also helpful for the data contributors themselves because they can use the DOI to see who's using their data. And DOIs are searchable on Google dataset searches as well. Another cool feature that we just released is under our download button. So previously, when you hit the download button, you would download an entire data set. So you would include, it would include all the monitoring locations when you hit download, and you can still do that. But we now have included a feature for downloading selected locations only. And this is really good because if you're only interested in a handful of these sites, you can only download a subset, as well as some other really large data sets, like some of the government monitoring data sets are so big that they might be hard to open if you download the whole thing. So now you can choose to just download a subset here. Some users choose to upload attachments with their data sets. Not this one, but there are a lot of examples of data sets that will include reports that come with their data sets, or sampling protocols that were associated with their data sets. Here you can access more information about data licensing. So as I mentioned, all data on DataStream is published under open data licenses, and we give you two different options of open data licenses when you publish your data set. So here's a little bit more information about the terms of use of that. If it's a data that's already published under an open data license, for example, government data sets are often now available on their own open data websites. They can cross-post that data on DataStream and then associate it with its already existing open data license. And then just finally, one way to download data sets is sort of how I showed you manually from the right here from the exploration tool, but we also have an open API. So this allows people to prochromatically pull data from DataStream, so computer to computer. You can find information on how to pull this data set in particular via API through clicking on the API button. And if this is something that interests you, if you often use computer programming, you can learn a little bit more about our open API and apply for an API key so that you can pull data from DataStream by visiting our GitHub page. So github.com/GordonFN. We have an API repository. It'll give you more information on that, as well as provide you some information on some other tools we've developed. Like we also have written a R package that will wrap around the API. So if you're an R user, that might also be something you're interested in. And yeah, just feel free to reach out to us if you want to learn more. Okay, so I think I've covered everything that I wanted to in the visualization tool. So maybe now I will throw it over to Patrick to go over some tips and tricks for formatting.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks so much, Mary. Yeah, so I'm going to go over some of the uploading stuff. Before we do, maybe we'll just see, Mary's going to launch another poll here and just kind of get an idea of where everybody's at. If you've uploaded data to DataStream before, if you're planning on uploading data to DataStream, or maybe you're just here to learn more about the platform and uploading data is kind of not on the horizon for you. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so looks like we've got a good mix, but the majority of people haven't uploaded DataStream data to DataStream yet. So hopefully we can teach you guys a little bit of how that process works, and hopefully you guys will be uploading data here in no time. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so the first thing, I'm just going to bring up the upload template here. Okay, so for those of you that are familiar with using DataStream, you may be familiar with the template. This is the main way that users can go about adding data to DataStream. The template exists both in this Excel document, but it also exists as well in a Google Sheet form. So if you, the majority of our users do use the Excel template just because people are more familiar with Excel. But if you don't have Excel in your computer, don't worry, you can also use this Google Sheet as well. Has all the same kind of functionality and will work in much the same way as the Excel template. However, for today, since they're really similar, we're just going to focus on going through the Excel template. So I'm going to go through first just the different tabs on the template. Then we'll go through an example of what formatting your data looks like, and then I'll show you guys the, how to go all the way from getting your data, putting it into here, and then putting it onto the site. So the first page here of the template just runs you through the general instructions on how to use it. I'm not going to go through all those right now, as we'll go through them throughout the webinar. Some things to note here, though, there is a version number here. The version does change over time. We make updates. Sometimes that'll be new allowed values. Sometimes it'll be the way the formatting is. So just make sure you keep an eye on when that template is and check to see if you're using the most up-to-date one. To do that, you can either go to the resources page, as Mary mentioned, and it'll have which version we're on there. Or you can also do it from the My Datasets page. When you go to upload, if you just hover over this I here, you'll see the version number there as well. So once you've made sure you've got the right version using the right template, that's kind of the first step from this first page, and mostly what it's here for. Once you do that once or twice, you'll get the instructions down. The second tab here is our allowed values. So the allowed values tab here is kind of the meat and potatoes of the DataStream data standard. What this does is it kind of just very generally just kind of tells you what columns need to be in the data, and then which columns are required and what information needs to go into each column. So you'll see here, all of these are required. So the name, your latitude and longitude are required fields, and they have to be in decimal degrees. Another big one here is also your date and time. So your date has to be in year, month, day, and your time has to be in hours, minutes, seconds on a 24-hour clock. But it also gives you allowed values for what your characteristic names. So for example, temperature needs to be temperature, comma, water, as well as your units as well. So you're making sure you're putting your units in the same way. So this allowed value walks you through all of these tabs and kind of lets you know which ones you need to focus on and what information goes into those. Next, we have our glossary tab. So this just gives you a definition of each of the columns if you're unsure exactly what they mean. And then it also walks you through what some of the allowed values are and in what cases they should be used. So this is a handy tool if you're going to and you're unsure which value best meets your needs. You can come over to the glossary here and it'll walk you through that. Next up, now we're getting into the actual data pages. So the first one here is your dataset metadata page. This page here outlines the dataset level metadata for your dataset that you'll be putting onto DataStream. So that's, what is the name of it? What's the contact email if people want to find out more information about the data, who uploaded it, some information about, why it was collected, as well as this is where you kind of can, determine what kind of licensing. The licensing information is determined here. So this you fill in, and then once you get to the upload process, you just copy and paste it into the site, and we'll see that here in a little bit. Next is the monitoring locations tab. So what we do on the upload template here is we break your data into kind of these 4 distinct tabs, and this makes the process a lot easier, as you only have to input your location information once instead of inputting it for every line. So this is where you'll input just, your location, what the name of it is, latitude and longitude, and what kind of location type. Next, we have our characteristic metadata tab. So this is where you put in information around your characteristics. So what the characteristic name is, what units it falls under. If it's a lab sample, you'll have to come over here and input, what the lab ID, method IDs are and what the lab name is. So these 3 get filled in once the first time you use the template, and then you just keep saving them over and over again. The one then that you change each time is the results tab, and this is where you just put your results. So very simply, you'll, for most samples, you'll just be filling in the location ID, the characteristic ID, the date, and the value. And it'll just be those kind of 4 columns and you'll be good to go. However, there is some other columns that you can put information in. You'll notice that some of the columns are red and some are yellow. The red columns are required and the yellow ones are optional. So you might not record time. If you don't, that's fine. But if you do, you can throw it in there. That's a common one we see a lot of people using. You can also add some result comments in here as well. And then, lab sample ID. If your lab gives you an ID, you can throw that in too. So once all 4 of these tabs are filled in and completed, then you come over to this export tab, and this is where it combines all those 4 tabs together into the DataStream format. And then this is the tab that you save and then upload to the site. And we'll show you that. You're going to save this as a CSV file. I'll show you the kind of steps to do that. And then you just click and drag and add it to the site. So these 4 tabs are the main 4 that you're going to be focusing on. But there are some other tabs here that can provide some helpful information. One is this tips and tricks tab. It just kind of outlines some common issues that people run into and then some solutions for those. We also have this characteristic name lookup. So this is where you can actually look up the name of a characteristic. It has the entire list we have, also breaks them down by CAS number. You'll see here that method speciation and sample fraction are 2 columns. What this denotes is whether these are required or not. So some fields, for example, a lot of the nutrients, if I look up something like ammonia, I'll look up ammonia. Let's go entire cell contents. It's going to require both a method speciation and a sample fraction. Method speciation is just denoting what it was collected as. So was it as N or as NH3 or NO2? And then sample fraction is, was it, in the case of nutrients, was it filtered or unfiltered? And in terms of things like metals, it's total or dissolved. So you can find out all that information here from this characteristic lookup tab, but there's also some ways that this kind of works back with the characteristic metadata tab over here, and I'll show you that when we get to that. Next, we also have a result unit lookup. Same deal. It's got all of the result units here, so you can just look them up. Some time zone ones, horizontal reference system. And then finally, this is the change log. What the change log does is it just lets you know since the last version what changes we've made. So sometimes that'll be that we've added new allowed values, so you can go in and check that here. Sometimes we just fix formatting, or sometimes it's bigger changes where we're realigning columns. So this is just a good spot to go to see what changes have been made since the last time you used it and see if that's going to affect it. So for today's training session, though, I am going to go through some data and show you guys what that kind of looks like to get it from the point of some lab data to directly onto DataStream. So first thing, you're going to fill out this dataset metadata tab. I'm just going to fill in the dataset name for now because this information just is going to be copy and pasted into the site. But this is the only thing that actually kind of impacts the template itself, as it's used to fill in the dataset name tab on the dataset name column on the export tab. So next we have our monitoring locations. So for this example today, I'm going to be taking the data from this lab document. So this is a lab sheet that some of you may look familiar to you or some kind of a similar idea. So I'm just going to take the information from this lab test and put it into the template. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the location information from up here. So as we can see here, these are the 6 different locations that the organization used. So I'm going to bring these over and put these into the monitoring location ID column. So one thing, if I just come over and just Control C and then hit Control V, what'll happen is it actually does replace some of the formatting in here. And it also puts it in this kind of horizontal. So I need it to be vertical. One way you can do that is if you go down here and right click, you'll see these different paste options. These are super helpful when you're copy and pasting into DataStream. The main one you're going to want to use most of the time is this values one. This ensures that you're only copying over the values and not any formatting that goes with it, as that'll cause some issues in the template. For this one though, I'm just going to transpose it. What this one does is it takes your horizontal data and puts it into a vertical format. So if I hit transpose, you'll see now I got it in this nice vertical form. So then I can just copy it from there. I'm going to right click up here. Oh, sorry, copy. There you go. And then I'm just going to right click, and then I'm going to go to values. And now what that did is it pasted just the values in, and you'll notice that it changed from red to green. Green means go, we're good to go. So that's great. If I had put in something incorrect, it would go red. For example, it would stay red. So for example, for my latitude, if I put in a bunch of nonsense, it's going to come back and tell me that, you know, my latitude has to have 6 to 8 decimals and be a number between 0 and 90. So if I hit OK, it'll stay red, and then I can just delete that. For the location ID, one of the main ones that it's going to test you, make sure that you're not doing, is having duplicate IDs. So your monitoring location ID has to be unique. The reason for that is it's used to join up the locations with the results. So each column has to be unique. So I'm just going to delete that row because I already have it up here. So next I'm going to put in the location names. So for this could be a longer name. So the location ID is maybe a shorter ID that I use maybe when I'm in the field, or maybe it's a shorter ID that I use when I'm inputting it. This is kind of where you put your longer site names. So you just come in here, you put in your longer names. Obviously, if you were doing your own sites, these would be a little more descriptive and these would be probably a little shorter, but this is just kind of for the example. So next I've got my latitude and longitude. So I'm just going to copy over those. So I'm going to copy my latitude here. Again, I'm going to use the transpose feature, and then I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste as values. You'll see again that turned green, so we're good to go. And then I'm just going to do the same thing here with my longitude as well. So again, right click, transpose, and then copy, right click, just as values. So then there's these two other columns I need to put in. This is our coordinate reference system. So this is what reference system was used when we determined the coordinates. The most common ones here are at the top, so NAD 27, NAD 83, and WGS 84. So I'm just going to go with NAD 83 for now. However, we also do have an unknown option. So if it is historical data and you're not sure of what this is, you can always just put unknown in instead. You just can't leave it blank. So I'm just going to copy this down. Again, I'm going to copy using the values. So that'll copy the formatting. It won't copy the formatting, just the value. And then finally, my location type. So we have a few different location types here. Estuaries, Great Lakes, pond, lake and pond, ocean, reservoir, river, stream, wetland. So I'm just going to kind of choose a couple different ones here. Let's just do those two. And then I'll copy these down. There we go. So now we can see that my whole tab here is green. So that means my location information has been inputted, is complete and ready to go. So this only needs to be done, like I said, once, the first time that you put data into DataStream, and then you can just build on this. So let's say I add a new site. Let's say we have test site 7 comes in. I can just come down to the next row, add test 7, add my new name, and then I can add whatever the coordinates are for that. So I'm just going to make up some here. And then we can, let's say it's a river. And then you're just going to keep building this with every single new site that you have. And this will be a great, just, unique list of all of the sites that you're doing. Somebody asked if I can enlarge my screen. Absolutely. There we go. Hopefully that I did it. That's enough to keep everything. So hopefully that helps a little bit. So yeah, so this is, that's how you add your locations in. So once my locations are added, the next thing I'm going to focus on is my characteristics. So if we go back to our example here from the lab, these are the names of the characteristics that I get from the lab. These aren't, however, the same characteristic names that are required in DataStream. I'll also enlarge this one as well. So one of the tricks that you can use is if I copy these names as they exist from my lab, I can put these in as the characteristic IDs. I'll show you how this works later, but what this allows us to do is actually use these characteristic IDs in the results tab, and it makes it easier for copy and pasting. If you don't, however, if it's not from a lab, let's say you're just doing field data, or you're not, you're just doing a field sample. Let's say I was just doing temperature. I could put temp here, and that would be my characteristic ID for my temperature. The main thing here is the same with monitoring IDs. They need to be unique. So let's say I do have temperature, and I do temperature in both degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. You know, not the best example, probably normally milligrams per liter and micrograms per liter, but I could do something like this to denote kind of the difference between the two of these. And that way I'd be able to say, okay, this is my one that I use for Celsius, and this is the one I use for Fahrenheit. So once I have my characteristic IDs set for all my different characteristics that I collect, then I can set my activity type. So the main ones we have in DataStream are these field measure observation ones. So these are if you're, again, going out in the field. So with a portable data logger, that's if you're using something like a YSI or a hobo logger. Field measure observation, though, is if you're going out measuring something in the field, but you're not using a portable logger for that. And then sample routine is if you're taking a sample and taking it to the lab. So for these ones here, I'm just going to use this sample routine because these are all lab samples. And then I'll put a temp, I'm gonna remove this one here. I'm just gonna keep this as temperature. And we're gonna set this as a portable data logger because let's say I'm using a YSI to fill that in. Cool. So those two are filled in. As you noticed, I can use the drop downs. It'll give me what my allowed values are. And then when I select the proper allowed value, it changes to green. So next we have our media name. So currently in DataStream, we are allowed two major media types. One is water and the other is sediment. So if you are taking sediment samples or soil core samples, you can add that data. But for the most part, we're seeing people using surface water. As well, if you're doing ocean water, you can choose that. Ambient air if you're doing air temperature. But like I said, surface water is the most common. So I'm just going to put surface water in for all of these. Again, copy that down. Next, we have our collection equipment. So this is if you're using, this is optional. As you can see, it's yellow. Again, the two main common ones we have are water bottles, as most people are using a water bottle to grab their sample for the lab, or probe, sensor, hobo logger, YSI deal. But we also do have a bunch of other options. So if you are using more specialized equipment, you can choose that from below. In this case, I'm just going to choose water bottle for all my lab samples. And again, copy that down with the right click and paste as values. And then for the last one, since this is my field and I'm using a portable data logger, I'm not using a water bottle. In this case, I'm using a probe or sensor. So I'll select that one. So next are our characteristic names. So this is where we do find, a lot of the first kind of growing pains with DataStream are in these translations. Again, this does just need to be done once, and once you're done, you should be able to carry it forward. But we are really specific on how the characteristic names how they're allowed to be entered and what they need to be. The reason for this is all of those features that you saw that Mary showed us earlier are only possible because we have this kind of standardization of our data. This will also allow your data to more easily be compared with other data sets in the region, and will allow us in the future to have tools where you can download all of the data in your watershed, regardless of kind of origin, and it will all look the same. So with that being said, for this one, let's say I'm looking at alkalinity. One option I have is if I type the name in here and click this drop down, it's going to give me a short list of all of the different names with alkalinity in it. So we can see all the different ones here. In this case, I'm looking at alkalinity total. So I'll click on that one. I could have also, though, gone over to the characteristic name lookup tab, and I could have instead over here typed in alkalinity and then gone through the list this way as well. To pull up this, you just hit Control F, or you can use the find option up here. And I can go through and look at all the different ones that are alkalinity based and pick the one that made the most sense, which in this case is alkalinity total. So I've selected that. That's good to go. I can do the same here with my other ones. So if I go ammonia, hit the drop down, it'll give me the short list again. I can see ammonia is here. One thing you'll notice, however, with ammonia is when I selected ammonia, these two method speciation and result sample fraction columns went red. That kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, where on the result characteristic name lookup tab, it will tell you if method speciation and result sample fraction are required. In this case, they are. So if I go over here and I look at ammonia total, I can get the method speciation really easy. In this case, that's as n. So we can see over here in the name, it's ammonia total comma brackets as n. However, now I need to put in the sample fraction. Now it does say total over there, so I can see why your first instinct would be to put total in here. The reason what we do in DataStream is this would be okay if it was a metal. However, for nutrients, we do have different guidance on this. And the reason for this is that total for nutrients can be construed in two ways. One can be it's the total sample as in the non-dissolved, as in the dissolved and non-dissolved sample, or it can be total as in all speciations of the nutrient. So for nutrients, instead you're going to determine whether it was filtered or unfiltered. Since this is total, it's most likely unfiltered, but you can check with your lab on that, and they'll be able to give you the information. The main entries here would be unfiltered, filtered, filtered lab, or filtered field. So if you filtered it in the field, you can put it in here. So I'm just going to go through and put some of these other ones in here. So I've got my bicarbonate. And again, you'll see that the sample fraction and method speciation didn't change colors there. So I'm going to just go through, type these all in. And again, so for example, chloride, it doesn't give you total or dissolved. So you'll just have to reach out to your lab and get some information from them on what those pieces are. If you do need help with that, we can also give you that help. I'm just going to write total for now, just so this kind of works. So type that in. I put the drop down because we're looking at nitrate, and nitrogen is a bit of a different one in organic. Again, you'll see these went red, so I'll just have to put as n. We've gotten that information, but this other information we don't have from the lab. So for this example, I'm just going to put unfiltered, just to put something in there for now. You'll notice, though, for all of the nutrients that the method speciation and result sample fraction are required. Again, this is something that you'll only have to do once the first time, get it from your lab, and then once you've filled it in here, you should be good to go moving forward. And these are the kind of things that really at the lab shouldn't change too often. pH, this one's a lab sample of pH instead of a field sample, so we changed the name just to denote that. So total phosphorus, oops. Some of these I already know because they're the same common ones that we see all the time. So I'm just gonna put these in. Again, this one we don't actually have as what, so you'd have to double check with the lab. And we're given total, which normally maps to unfiltered, but again, I would check with your lab on that. And then we have total dissolved solids. And then this one is calculated. And then finally, sulfates. Okay. Okay, perfect. And then I'll put this last sample fraction in. In this case, I'll just go total. Okay, awesome. So that's the kind of, that took a few 5 minutes here. It may take you a bit longer because you'll have to contact your labs, but that's kind of one of the biggest pieces here. So once I've got that information, I'm just going to copy and paste in my units because they're given to me here from the lab. So if I just paste those units in, you'll notice all the ones that are correct went green, but pH is incorrect. The reason for that is we use none for the pH units. And then for temperature, I'll add degrees Celsius. Then the last required column for everything is this result value type. So this is where for most of them, it will be actual. But you'll notice though, for total dissolved solids, it's calculated. So we'll actually put in a different one for that. So I'm going to copy these down because they're all the actual result that the lab gave us. There's no manipulation of the result. However, for total dissolved solids, I'm going to change this to calculated because this is a calculated value. Okay, next we've got our detection limit measures. So this is if you've got greater than or less than. So we'll go back to the lab here. You'll see they gave us these limits here. So I'm just going to copy these limits as we got them from the lab over into our measure. So these are something you have to check with your lab just to see, what their kind of greater than and less than values are. You can put those in here. Next, you just got to put in the units. So the units should all be the same. And then the value type. So again, this is one of the pieces you'll have to ask your lab about. So main pieces there, sample fraction, method speciation, and limit types, you'll have to just double check. Most of them will, these ones I'm assuming are mostly going to be lower reporting limits. So I'll copy that in. So I'll do that all through these ones. Okay. And then the last thing you'll notice is that these ones up here are red and that the last line is green. The reason for this being is that this information about the lab name and the methods only applies to lab data. So this field sample, I don't have to put anything, it's good to go, but I will have to get this information from the lab. Now, luckily in the lab sheet that this lab gives, they actually do include the methods here. So I can actually just copy over these methods. So you'll see the method references here. So I've got AFA 4110 B ion chromatography. So AFA is what you're going to put into the context. So if I hit the drop down, you'll see here AFA. The method ID is where I'm going to put that 4110. And then if you have it, which we do in this case, we have the B ion chromatography. You can actually, or sorry, it's just ion chromatography. The B goes in the other section, but you can just add that in over here. So I'm just going to put that in here. So I've got the ion chromatography will come in here. Awesome. And this should be B. So you're going to go through and put that in for all of your different characteristics from the lab report here. If there are any that are missing, you can double check with the lab. Since they're not as easy to kind of copy and paste in, I'm just going to just take the names of them for now, just to make the process go a little quicker. And they're also not in the correct order. So I'm just going to copy and paste them in, even though they might not be the correct ones, just kind of to give you guys the example. So you can fill all these in. You'll notice, however, with total dissolved solids, it's calculated, which means it won't have a method. So in the method, I can just put calculated. And then finally, I just have to put in my lab. So this is test lab. Awesome. So this is the most complicated tab that takes the most amount of time. and it's the one that you probably will end up with the most questions on and need the most help with. However, once you complete it the first time, you can use it over and over again for years to come. It's just going to be this kind of beginning hurdle. And once you get past that, you should be good to go. And we're also here to help you go through this. So we can set up sessions or one-on-one training to go over all of this. So once you get your characteristics all set up, your locations all set up, now we just go to the easy part, which is results. And the reason why this is so easy is because now I can just come over here and I can do this in a couple of different ways. So the first way I can do is I can copy all of these results over. So these are my characteristic IDs. I can just copy those in. And then I can, let's say, do all my ones for test one, I think was, yeah, test one. So I can just copy this down. And now I can just take these results here and I can just copy, I just want these ones. I can just copy these in. So I can just come over to my results, copy. Easy enough. Now I've got my characteristic ID, location ID, and my results. Now you'll notice that this one went red because it's less than. In DataStream, you can only have numbers in this column. This is to prevent any kind of errors having characters and numbers in the same section. So to fix this, you just change your result detection condition to below, because this is below the detection limit. And then you just delete that. And then this will take the value that we put on the characteristics tab and fill that in automatically for you. And the final piece here is the date. So I'm just going to grab my date here. And I'm going to copy and paste that in. Now you'll notice the date auto formatted for me. One thing I would recommend is going in. Here and changing your format for your time and date on your computer to be in a 24-hour clock and the DataStream format. The reason for this being is that Excel will auto format your date to whatever your preference is. So you may run into some date issues. If you're not super picky and your date doesn't matter and your time on your computer doesn't matter to you, and which I think for most people it doesn't, I'd recommend changing it to this format, and that'll make your life a lot easier. So now that I've got all of my data in here, I just come over to this tab, I right click, I hit refresh. And what it's going to do is it's going to join all those 4 tabs together, and it's going to put my data all here into the DataStream format. And as you can see, all of my stuff is either green or yellow and no red. So I'm good to go. So now we just go File, Save As. I'm going to save it on my desktop here. And change the name, training session, dataset. And then the main thing is you want to go to Save As type, and you want to save it as comma delimited. So CSV stands for comma separated values. So make sure you click this one specifically, and that'll save your data in the right format. So you hit CSV, comma delimited. I see the .csv in my name. Good to go. I hit save. It'll give you this thing saying it doesn't support multiple sheets. That's okay. You only want to save just this export tab. So once you've got your data saved, so now I've formatted all my data, then you come into DataStream. You're going to log in. When you log in, you'll see this upload. When you log in the first time, you won't see the upload data tab. Let us know that you've created an account. We'll give you data steward access. And then when you go to upload data, you'll be able to log in and see this upload data tab. When you click on upload data, it will take you to your data sets. And this is where you can add a new data set. This will be blank for you for your first time. You can also get the templates from up here as well. So to add data, you just go add new data set, agree to the terms, upload data set CSV, and then you just click and drag over. So I'm just going to grab my data set now and then drag it over. Now, we did have the template, which helped us determine if our data was formatted correctly. But also when we go to upload, it will also check it here and let us know which rows are affected and what errors are affected in those rows. So as you can see, this isn't the exact one I did. This is another test one that is incorrect, but it'll tell you that there's some mistakes. Errors have to be changed. Warnings are suggested changes. So you can download the full error list here. But once I go through and I fix all my errors and I make sure my data is good to go, then I can click and drag my corrected data set in. And then it will take me to this metadata page. This is where I can copy and paste in that metadata. So you put I'm just going to put in some test information here for now. Citation, if you leave this blank, will auto-populate and update it over time. So I'd recommend leaving that blank. This is where you select your license. Most people select this attribution license. Attribution means that your data set has to be cited when other people use it. As Mary mentioned, though, if you do have a government license, you can put it in here. There's some other information as well on your data set and how it's processed, or if it's from another source. And then you can say if your monitoring program is ongoing or complete, say ongoing, and hit next. Now, once you hit next, your data set is going to go in. It's going to get added to the site. Make sure that you leave your this web page open until the data set has completed. The reason for that being is that if you exit away in the middle of the process, it won't finish adding to the site, and then you'll be stuck in a constant holding pattern. So if you do go in and exit out accidentally, let us know. We can go in and reset it, and then you can go in and try again. So once your data does finish uploading and importing into the site, you will be able to preview the data set. You'll notice that this one has a black hourglass, so this means that it's importing. The yellow one means that it's preview, so you'll get the option to preview your data set. What this preview data set allows you to do is allows you to see the visualization page and go through and see, are my characteristic names and units correct? Do my locations make sense? Are they in the area that I actually want them to be in? You can also check out the statistics and make sure that the statistics make sense. Once your data set looks good, you can approve it. If it doesn't, you can reject it. It'll remove what you just did, and then you can try again. Once your data set has been added and it's all good to go, you'll get this green check mark. Green check mark is good. And then once your data set has been added and it's good to go, you can then update it over time. So your options for updating your data set are you can add new data. So this is where you just add a CSV file with only the new rows and it adds them to the bottom. Modify is when you download your old data set, make any necessary changes, and then re-upload it, and it will replace the data set on the site with your new data set, or you can just edit your metadata. As Mary said, as those changes are made, your version number will change over time. Modifying your data set will make the first number change, adding will make the second number change, and then you can also add to the change log. One last thing too is when you go to publish and approve your data set, you can set a period if you want to embargo it. So if you want it to not be published, you can set a time period up to a year in the future, and then it will sit like this with this gray lock symbol saying that it's waiting to be published. However, if you do want it to just publish today, you just set the date as today's date and hit publish, and then it will publish your data set. Once your data set is published, if you go right to the map, you may not see it on the map. That's because it takes around 24 hours before the data goes onto the public map, just to make sure everything's working okay. Once you publish, you'll also get this DOI. A DOI is a digital object identifier, and it's a persistent link to the data. We recommend if you are sharing to share it with that DOI link. So that's kind of the whole formatting and uploading process. I know that was, a lot to go through right now, but I hope that's enough to get you guys started. And if, as you get started, you have questions, feel free to reach out. I do recommend to people who are starting new to maybe format a month of data or one site, whatever makes the most sense to you, and then reach out to us and we can look over it for you and make sure that you're on the right track and try to correct anything before you get too far down the line and have to go through everything. So with that being said, though, I am going to throw it back to Mary just to close this out here.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so I know we're pretty much out of time here, so I'll just wrap it up. Thanks everyone for joining us today. If you want to learn more, if you're interested in contributing some data or you want to work with us, please just reach out. You can send us an email to datastream@gordonfn.org. And you can also find us on our social media pages, sign up for the Gordon Foundation newsletter, and then you'll receive updates about DataStream. We do have some more Dive into Data webinars coming up for the rest of the year. In June, we have our next series, and that's going to be about community-based water monitoring. So we're going to feature a panel of some of the community-based monitoring groups that we work with, and they're going to talk about how their programs are turning their citizen science data into action. As well as this fall, we're also doing a water quality monitoring for fish habitat webinar. So more details about that will be released soon, so stay tuned.